Hello. So I've been told that I am going to love this pre-show. I don't realize it yet, but I'm going to love it. So I am psyched. So let's see what's going on. What's happening?
Sounds familiar. Okay. There is a current lawsuit out there, and it's called the Real USFL LLC versus Fox Sports. So, as you know, on this show, we've talked about the USFL starting up, and now there's a lawsuit. So Larry Zonka, who people may remember, was great with the Dolphins, was part of that perfect season.
Of
course. Larry Zonka was also part of that failed handoff with Joe Pisarcik with the Giants. He also was lost at sea. And then
that's rest with your top 10 Larry Zonka moments.
Well, listen, I'm a Jets fan. I don't like Larry Zonka, but I appreciate what he did as a player.
Yeah.
And he also was lost at sea and rescued in recent years. Well, he also was a GM with the USFL. And so here is his quote. The basis of this lawsuit is, he says it boils down to this: if the USFL doesn't have any value, why did Fox want it? And so that's a very good point. And so now they're going to fight it out in court. So who knows if the USFL will even be able to operate under that name? Like, I think it's fascinating.
Well,
so there's a group of,
it feels like you could have bought the name USFL for like $100 on GoDaddy. Like, I can't imagine
it's probably what the basis of this was.
Well, here's a bit of trivia. One, I hate Larry Zonka for the fact that he was on the 72 Dolphins, and those bunch of losers have to pop champagne every time the last team that's undefeated, loses a game. Yeah, so get a life. But I will give him props that he did have a cameo in my favorite war movie of all time, Midway.
Really? Midway?
Yes, in Sense Around, Midway.
What's pretty funny about this panel, there's just 4 people that probably all can spell the name Larry Zonka, but I don't think there's that many people out there that right now that could. Like, I mean, I just remember from my football cards, and stuff like that. But it's a great name. It's a great name.
Yeah, it is, and his running mate was Jim Kick, which is another.
Jim Kick had one talent: he could jump at the goal line and get touchdowns. He jumped right over the line.
That's a pretty big talent.
A big talent. No question about it.
Yeah.
Russ, the worst football game I've ever been to was a 10-7 Chicago Bears victory over the Bills in, I think, like 1980 or 81. And the only touchdown was Walter Payton from the 1-yard line jumping over the entire offensive line.
Yeah, that's what he would do.
That's what he would do. He was great at it.
One of the biggest changes in sports in my lifetime has been a reduction of importance of the running back in the NFL. Based on anyone who watched the.
I mean, the only thing I'll add is what I was telling somebody offline was Larry Zonka. He would literally bust through the line. Like, he wouldn't care who was there, and he was gaining yardage, but kept to get back to the running back.
Yeah, just, anybody who watched the football then would think that we'd be where we are today, where, the running back is important, but not nearly as important as it was.
You can tell about the decrease in importance of the running back based on fantasy football, because now fantasy football, it's quarterbacks and wide receivers and running, maybe 1 or 2 running backs in a first round. When I was a commissioner of fantasy football league back in the days when I would be calculating the stats from the newspaper the following day, it was running backs. It was like every number 1 running back in the first 2 rounds. And if you didn't get 2 of them, you were screwed. So yeah, it's different.
Yeah. So anyhow, the real USFL players are suing Fox. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with this one. And so the USFL still lives.
USFL still alive.
I covered the USFL, loved it. Michigan Panthers.
I like the uniform.
Carter, Bobby.
Great uniforms too. There were a lot of good uniforms in the USFL.
I'll tell you this one thing, you'll appreciate this. So when I was in Houston, we had just gotten done with the flag football season. We were kind of full of ourselves. We were like the best team on campus, but it was a very competitive intramural system there with a lot of athletes who weren't playing one sport would play in these. So anyhow, we joined the city tournament, the city of Houston. And so we go and play, and the first team we're facing had 4 members of the Houston Gamblers on it. Now, it wasn't Jim Kelly, but Kevin Gilbride, who was their assistant coordinator, offensive coordinator was a college quarterback. He was quarterbacking, and the other guys were fair. They either played tight end or stayed in line. And I think we scored 1 touchdown, maybe 2, and they scored like 5 or 6 on us. And they were like, "Hey, good game. At least you scored." And we were like,
there you go.
It was true though. Awesome. These guys were so superior as far as athletes to us, but they enjoyed it because they just wanted to, play some football, even if it was out of season. So it was funny.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. All right, here we go. Let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's call it Wednesday. It's Wednesday, yeah. Wednesday.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's call it Wednesday.
Let's call it that because it is.
I just, my days of the week are messed up right now. Oh, Hockey World. It is Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and I'm still pissed off that the Birmingham Stallions stole Joe Cribbs from the Bills.
I'm Russ Cohen. I was not mad at that as a Jet fan.
Kevin Allen, HockeyBuzz.
I'm Eklund, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world, and is supported by people like you. If you go to patreon.com/hockey, you can help keep the show going. We need people to do that soon. So please come and help us. That would be nice. Patreon.com/hockey. Thanks so much. And if you can't support us right now because money's tight, we know that all over the place. Please at least subscribe to this on YouTube and follow us and pass us around and write a review if you could. That would be great too. We'd love that. But let's get into it. And first, I'm going to start with how I always start, which is the Islanders update. Okay, so last night the Islanders. At one point last night, it looked really good. The Islanders were up 3-2 against the Avalanche in Colorado going into the third period. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, man, I'm going to have a great Islanders update for you guys tomorrow. And the Islanders are going to once again be in control of their fate. All they had to do was get 2 more points. No, it didn't work out. The Avalanche came back, and now the Islanders are 3 points away from controlling their fate, which is really getting scary. So it's starting to look grim for the Isles, but we'll see. I'm going to see where we go from here, but I just wanted to start with that.
I'm going to calculate the magic number in terms of them being eliminated.
I want to tell you a story, though, Eklund. I was in the press box last night, and one of the things I enjoy doing is saying hello to the folks in the scouting community, because they're usually, ex-players that I covered back in my USA Today career and so forth. And I came across someone last night who shares your thought that the Vegas Golden Knights are in trouble.
Okay.
And he said that he has seen them multiple times.
Yeah.
And he said their goaltending has not been good, and that their level of play isn't where it's at when they're playing well. And he said, and there's other teams involved that are actually, playing well. He thinks there's a chance. I asked him, could you put a percentage on it? He said, I'm not going to put a percentage on it. He goes, but I think there's a good chance they may not make the playoffs. I think it's possible. He said.
Well, before you answer that, I have to tell Kevin, I ran into a scout that I didn't expect to run into on Monday at the Flyers game. So, before this year started, I think I heard late last year that Mark Howe was retiring. And I said, okay. Mark Howe was at the rink like maybe a month ago. And we were like, hey, good to see it. And he's like, yeah, just a one-time thing, whatever. He was back at the rink yesterday. And I went up to him and I'm like, Mark, you're here. And he goes, yeah, don't get used to seeing me. This is only the second time. It's probably the last time. So I don't know, Ken. Maybe he can't stay away.
Yeah. No, that could be. Boy, that was, for a name player, a Hall of Famer, his exodus from the Red Wings was the quietest. And that's the way he wanted it.
Yeah.
He wanted no fanfare, even though he had been the Red Wings.
He doesn't like that. He doesn't like the spotlight on him.
No, not at all. And, you can understand why. He grew up in the spotlight.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
He's told me multiple times about, him and his brother having to wait outside the dressing room while his dad signed autographs for a half hour after the game. And it wasn't like, and back then, players didn't hustle out like they do now. Now, there's, layers of NHL records that are being established for the quickest to change and be out the door.
Right.
But back then, players kind of lingered in the dressing room a little bit and, had a beer or whatever. And then they would come out, and then Gordy would sign. So, they'd be waiting for their dad for like an hour after the game. And that's where both the Howe boys developed their shots, is because they played, hockey in the corridors with, tape and rubber balls and everything else while they were waiting for their dad.
Well, I believe it. Just to the Golden Knights won 3-1 yesterday over San Jose. Now you can say, well, the Sharks aren't a bad team. They were playing Zach Sauchenko in goal, so it wasn't exactly like they were playing against Eddie Balfour. But no Pacioretty, no Stone in the lineup, and they won 3-1 with Riley Smith scoring 2 goals, which
that's why he can't go anywhere. He is.
I know that's the problem that they have right now.
It's not a problem. He is their best player. They'll figure it out another way.
Yeah.
Well, if they can, that'd be great. But if right now, you
have no choice.
They need Smith and they need Stone. I agree with you.
I think you really missed the boat, Russ. You need to hire yourself out as a dose of confidence. Like whenever there's indecision within the organization, you bring Russ in, and he just lays it out and says, just go do it. Like, that's the plan. Like, go do it. And his confidence if it could trickle down.
To be fair, though, I wouldn't have given that same speech to the basically the captain of the Titanic. I wouldn't have. It has to be the right situation.
Well,
there is something to be said. I've always believed this. That belief in yourself can be contagious, and also I think it can kind of give you a boost if you believe you're going to be successful. You got a shot. So
no question. So watching the game, I watched a little bit of that Vegas game last night too, and I watched the Edmonton Flyers game too, back and forth sort of, and the Vegas. Those games were at different times. So I was back and forth with a bunch of games. But yeah, the Vegas Knights did look better. they did play harder for sure. The Sharks did not show up for that game. They just did. They had 17 shots on goal. It was just one of these things. Like Vegas's defense isn't that good. To keep you to 17 shots, your team doesn't show up. But then the Oilers.
Well, we got to talk about the Oilers game.
They're a different team now than they were 2 weeks ago. They are. Right. They're not great, but they're definitely. They definitely look more like a playoff team now than they did before, I'd say.
Yeah, actually, so it's interesting, Ek. So watching that game, there were a couple of thoughts I had. I think I said this on Sirius yesterday. I thought I said it on this show too, but I didn't. I basically was like, hey, look, if Connor McDavid comes in town and you only give up a point, it's a good game. And he ended up getting an empty net goal. But for the most part, like you said, Braun did a pretty good job on him. The interesting thing was, though, Draisaitl couldn't be stopped. If he lost the puck to somebody, he got it back. If he had the puck, nobody could get it off his stick. And if he had it for more than a few seconds, plays were happening, and they had no answer for that. But Mikko Koskinen was good. This is based off of yesterday's show. You have to watch yesterday's show if you want to understand that. But Mikko Koskinen had a good game. But I also noticed there was a big difference in the philosophy with the Oilers. And I spoke to Draisaitl about it post-game. The philosophy basically is, hey, Koskinen's covering everything he can now. Every time there's a puck and there's a second of indecision, he's covering it.
Yep.
And then the other thing is, the moment Koskinen makes a save, somebody is there to get rid of the puck. And the Flyers had no second chances. Now, other teams will. These are the Flyers. But
they really are covering up. They're covering up his rebound deficiencies big time.
Yes. And you know what? And they're doing a good job. He's 7-0-1 lately.
Yeah. He is. Remember that. You got to remember, and you don't realize until you see him live how friggin' large he is. Like he is enormous. Like he is. There are two. You could put two nets, one on top of the other, and Koskinen could cover both of them. Like that's his top. The top of his body is easily 4 feet above the post. Like it's just insane. It's really just
when Russ read off that statistic to me, his record in the last 8 games, I was like, wow, really? I'm gonna have to look. I have to look at that, and he's right. 7-0-1. You know what he was in the previous 7 games? 0-6-1. He is completely, and he's been this way for his entire NHL career. Completely inconsistent, completely undependable.
But there is a new coach and new philosophy. This is where I have to give it a chance.
Well, yeah, but
I don't think this stops them from trying to get a goalie. Like, just let's be fair. Like, And we're going to talk a little about the goalie market today because it seems to be getting a little bit more interesting as we go. But I don't think this stops Edmonton from getting a goalie. And
I will tell you that Ken Holland did not talk to Chuck once during that game. So clearly the Martin Jones deal that was out there is dead.
Well, I want to talk about goalies too, because last night I talked to a GM who said he has talked to other GMs, and they're all under the assumption the Oilers are not going to acquire a goalie.
Okay.
That they have other priorities. So.
Good luck, folks.
Yeah. No, I've heard that too. I've heard that.
Wow.
As well, but
I'll just say this.
I've heard both. I've heard a couple people. I do have a couple people who've told me that they think that that's a little bit
this may sound
Holland trying to like cover his thing. Basically, they might not be able to pull it off. Like
this
kind
may
of thing.
sound This may sound spiteful. I hope they miss the playoffs now because honestly,
how can we miss
sound spiteful?
There's no way to. Come on, Mike. That was obvious.
But it's idiotic.
It's not idiotic. What it is
idiotic. That's the one thing they need.
I don't think they have any options.
They don't have any options. That's the issue. It's not a matter of them not knowing this. I mean, it's not like Holland doesn't know that he needs a goalie. He knows he needs a goalie, but really, who is it? I mean, and now this is where I have it. I swear that you need to have. This is where you need to have talent evaluators out there to find. There is somebody in the NHL right now that could help the Oilers that they could get. There's a goalie out there that they could get, and I'm not sitting here pretending to know who that is. It might be Halak. It might be. I don't know who it is, but there is somebody out there right now. But at the end of the day, I think they feel like they can just shore up everything else and be competitive.
That's what I think they're planning on.
That's what they're doing. I mean,
or maybe they don't believe they can win it.
Right. Yeah, that might be the case too. They might think.
I don't know that, but I'm just throwing that out there. I mean,
of course, this is a fan base that will not accept that answer, right? This is
no. Players are talking differently. Like Draisaitl also did talk about playing tough defense and making themselves a little bit harder to play against, and they did do that. I felt like they were doing that, and they did control the puck a lot. So if the Oilers were able to ratchet up their defense like 25% more than it used to be, and then the other percentage of the time they have the puck, you're not going to have the puck that much. Well, and I think that may be their game plan.
Maybe they're waiting for Alex Stalock.
Well, I did.
He's only played 5 games, poor guy. I mean,
I do know a couple of scouts that were there last night that were looking at Justin Braun, and then when I brought that up in the chat room, I'm like, he definitely looked like he knew that people were there looking at him. Put it that way, because he played one of his better games I've seen in a long time, especially against McDavid, and showing that you could not neutralize him. Of course, no one can neutralize him, but the showing that he could definitely make things hard on McDavid, and didn't allow McDavid to like beat him to the outside. Didn't allow McDavid to do.
I mean, he still did do that a couple of times, but
he'll still do his thing. But
you tripped him a couple times too.
He tripped him a couple times too. But you can see that he was frustrating McDavid at a couple points too, which is not
no question.
And that's not something you see very often, right? You don't see Connor McDavid.
I saw Connor McDavid actually throw a few body checks.
Yeah, I saw him getting frustrated too. Yeah, you could see it a couple times. He went to the bench. You could see that he was annoyed. So that to me was something. I do think that that's a player that people are overlooking as far as the trade market goes.
Now, before we get into the rumors, I just want to ask Russ and Kevin this, and you obviously, but I just think with everything that's going on in the world right now. With the war and the hockey world reacting as they are. Eugene, I mean, just even the cursory things like Eugene Melnyk coming out today and saying they're going to play the Ukrainian national anthem in Ottawa the rest of the season. But even how it's affecting, players, American players, Canadian players in the KHL, teams leaving Russian leagues. I mean, Kev, do you think this is going to have a chilling effect on Russian players playing in the NHL now and what they do going forward? And B, Russ, do you think it'll have a chilling effect on Russian prospects in the 2022 draft or 2023 draft, depending on how long this goes on? Kev, you first.
Well, I mean, it's definitely going to have an impact. I just talked to someone yesterday who had knowledge of a Russian player who was playing. He made the good point. Look, no need to worry about Alex Ovechkin. He can hire a private plane and take him home to Russia. But there are kids in the Canadian Junior League who are going to have trouble getting home.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard. And, you could say, well, they can just apply for an extended visa because of what's going on. But then they're going to be 17, 18 years old and away from their family for a long time. Like this is going to have an impact. And obviously, they have no role in this. Like they're playing in a hockey tournament and then their leader attacks that. So, and I do think it's going to have an impact. I think if you're a Russian player, you're going to say to yourself, I'm not sure. I mean, if this war continues on or they occupy Ukraine or whatever happens and it stretches into a year or two, I mean, why would a player who's a borderline player come over here and play, not knowing exactly what might happen? You're better off staying in your home country.
Here's what I can say, and I agree with Kev, and I do think it will affect the draft. I've been following a player for a long time, this guy, Eliezer Sherbatov. Back in the day, he's 30 now, but back when he was about 15, 16, they thought maybe he could be a phenom and make it to the NHL, and he's a Israeli-Canadian. And so he was playing in the Ukraine in that league, and he had been posting on Instagram that he hopes he could get home to his family. And I think because he was Canadian, he was able to get out, and he is back in Laval now. And I was happy for him. But like Kev said, it's going to be harder on others. I do think players will be able to go to the draft because I've been asked that. I don't think they're going to stop them from doing that. But will teams be jumping in both feet first? If there's a player like in that fourth slot and they like somebody almost as much, Russian player's going to drop. There's just no way around it.
Yeah. And to your point, Kev, I was talking about this with somebody today. It's like with the ban on flights for more than likely these players to get back to Russia are going to have to fly through like India or China because if it's connecting through Europe, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, this is my prediction. They'll a private plane will be hired and Ovechkin will take a bunch of Russians home in his private plane would be my guess.
Maybe. That's very
right now, I don't, that would even be tricky, I think, because I think that even anything leaving this airspace, going to that airspace or the other way around, I don't know.
But you could fly to Mexico, rent a plane. You could fly to, they'll find a way home, but how easy will it be to find the way back in October?
And by the way, it's not just KHL players leaving. There's a lot of people leaving in general. I know somebody that's personally leaving now that works in the hockey field. People are just leaving now. They're leaving Russia because it's like, hey, they don't know what's coming next.
Yeah, I mean, and remember, we're talking about like Dinamo Riga leaving the KHL permanently, saying we're done. The moving
Jokerit's out.
Jokerit's
they were a playoff team. They just bowed out.
Yeah, Jokerit's building is owned by a Russian oligarch. They're moving the World Championships that were supposed to be held in Helsinki from that building to another building because they don't want to basically fund a Russian oligarch. So I mean, a lot of this stuff, the wide-ranging effect that it's going to have, we don't know what it's going to be like because right now we're 9 days into this war and who knows how long it'll last.
Well, I was basically told, and I think this is the case, because of the Russian ruble being so bad and the stock market crashing there, you're really not going to see any imports rushing, no pun intended, to play there next year. You're not going to see it.
No, I agree. And don't we have a Russian owner in the NHL too?
Well, we had a Russian owner in the NBA, but he sold the Nets.
Right.
No, we don't have
not in the NHL. No,
not anymore. Right.
And not in the NBA anymore.
And not in the exactly.
Right. All right. Let's get back to and before we get into the rumors though. I think we got to talk about Mo there in Detroit, Kevin.
You were talking about Sider?
Yeah. There's 11 points in 7 games, setting a Red Wings record for defenseman.
Yeah. No, he's just phenomenal. I'm actually quite surprised that people don't view him as the favorite to win Rookie of the Year. And
I don't see how they can't. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, I don't see how you can't either. He's playing almost 23 minutes a game. I just can't overstate how composed he is for a 20-year-old. And he is really remarkable. What I love most about him is, and I talk about this all the time, but he hasn't been a risk taker. He will be at some point. and yet he's piling up the points.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy that really is tethered to the blue line on the power play. Like, he doesn't move into the slot, which he's very capable of doing because he's so mindful of his defensive responsibility. He's blocked over 100 shots. He's big. He's strong. There's a couple of guys in Detroit have compiled all of his hits. You know, he's a tough player, backs down from no one. He's very, very gifted. Like, he is a all-around terrific defenseman. And, you know, he hasn't played, what's he got, 52 games in the league?
Yeah,
and
it's incredible.
Like he's played here for 5 years.
And they depend on him in every possible
situation. He's cast a shadow over Lucas Raymond, who's got 43 points and 16 goals. And if you watch him, he's
and those guys are buddies too. You know, they live together. You know, they're really close friends. Like, Moritz Seider is just a coach's dream. It's funny because Blashill has been real careful, you know, not to overstate it. He says things like, well, you know, I know he can be a great player, so I don't want to, you know, I want him to push himself to be even better. Like, you know, he's okay right now, but, you know, he can be great. And that's all true. Like, he could be one of the best of all time just because he can do it all. You know, and when I mean do it all, you know, when you can add hitting and defense and all that to, you know, his offensive ability, when you see him 3-on-3, what the Red Wings like to do is to throw him and Lucas Raymond and Larkin out. And boy, that's fun.
It's a lot of fun to watch. I mean, that game last night, you saw, you know, I always love this with young teams. You saw it with Ottawa like last year, a couple years ago. Before that, you know, you even saw it when the Islanders were getting better, and you could see it, you know, with Colorado when they were getting better. Every once in a while, you get a game that's like a foreshadowing, you know, like this is what this team is capable of. Young teams have the ability to do amazing things for a couple games, you know, and then they're not going to be able to keep it up. But last night was one of those games I thought, like with Carolina, you know, Carolina's a good, really, really good team. I mean, they're one of the best teams in the NHL, and to beat them, you know, I mean, I know it's overtime, whatever, but just to hang with them like they did, it shows. I think it's a nice thing for Red Wings fans for sure, but it absolutely shows.
Well, I would be loath to not say that in that conversation, when we're mentioning Seider and Raymond, and you know, I mean, Trevor Zegras is having a fantastic year, but right now the guy who's leading NHL rookies in scoring is Michael Bunting, and I know that he's 26 years old, but I don't think he's going to win the Calder, probably because of the fact that he's 20, even though he falls within the age requirements. But I think there is a chance if he keeps going like this that he's going to be one of the 3 finalists.
But he's not. To me, he's not even like I wouldn't trade him even up for Jeannot. Like Jeannot is the guy that really.
This is a fantastic rookie year, Kev.
I mean, Jeannot has really been phenomenal, and when you add, you know, the element for him, not only does he have the goals, but you know, he is already among the league leaders in hits.
Yeah, the physical nature of Jeannot does set him apart from Bunting.
I mean, Bunting is a poor man's Brendan Gallagher. He is a pain he has to play against, and every team that plays against him hates him, which is a valuable commodity because he draws penalties.
I wonder to myself, like some of these guys. I mean, we're seeing such great health, such great, you know, rookies this year, and I wonder how much of that might be a little bit of COVID based in terms of the fact that we're seeing that these guys have been at the end with the NHL team more than they might have been in the few past, where we're not necessarily afraid to send them back to certain places. Because
I don't think that's really helping develop them. I think it's rushed some guys in the league. Like we were talking yesterday, there's guys that are being rushed too. It's nice to be around the NHL team, but the NHL really isn't a place to develop stuff.
I mean, there's no way to really know whether it's beneficial or harmful. Like we talked about Jack Quinn, the Sabres first round pick. You know, at 18 years old, he's in the American Hockey League because the I think it was Ottawa 67s, which is where he was playing. They weren't playing. The OHL wasn't playing that year. He was playing out of position. He was playing in a league that he wasn't aware of, and you know, then the next year, he was leading the AHL in scoring. So you could say maybe that was a benefit, maybe it wasn't a benefit.
I can give you something that is a benefit for sure, and it's working in like what the opposite of what you were thinking, Ek. So I haven't put out the article yet, but I spoke to somebody in an organization the other day about a player who's playing for Harvard who in their rookie season now is a point a game. That player couldn't play in the ECAC last year because they were shut down. So they had to play an extra year in the USHL. Sean Farrell did the same thing, and I think he scored like 80 or 85 points, something insane. And then Sean Farrell was actually on the Olympic team. And this guy now is one of the best players on his team, where at the time he was drafted as a third rounder, probably was not thought of in that way. So it worked for players. COVID worked for players that when they couldn't play, went back a year and got more confident by playing in a league that they were super confident in already, and still could work on other things but not be overwhelmed. Whereas if you're in the NHL, it's hard for a rookie to work on anything.
Yeah, no, I get that.
It's always, too, is the question. I brought this up before, and let me just state it a little more clearly, because I think there was some confusion on what I was trying to say. But, in Detroit, they sent players over to Sweden, and both Joe Veleno and Mort Seider had exceptional seasons there. And I think the Red Wings liked that experience because they had Lidstrom over there, they had Cronwell over there, they've got Håkan Andersson, their lead scout, so they like him playing over there. However, both of those players during the courses of interviews this season have said it's so different that there's really no comparison, and it's hard because you play there differently in order to succeed. I know Veleno has made a point of that, and then you come over here, and the game isn't like that.
No, it's not.
And so they've
defensively.
And like Seider said, I was glad, I got confidence and everything, but it's just different. You what you do there is different than what they're asking you to do over here. So, I think you got to kind of weigh all those factors in, and I think it is always the case. I think you have to look at the individual player to see what they need. And, with some Europeans, you want to get them over and get them accustomed to the North American game. But I want to make one other point about the Rookie of the Year race, because it's always bugged me. It really bugged me when I was president of the Writers Association. And it was something that Mike alluded to. It bugs me when people make their own rules for criteria. Now, the rules don't say you're eligible that says you're eligible to be considered for Rookie of the Year if you're this age group. It doesn't say weight it so that you give more credence to the younger player. It doesn't say that at all. If we don't like that as voters, we should change the rules. We should not make up our own rules.
I agree.
So it really bugs me when it says, well, I'm, the other guy's younger. Well, if things are tied, you in your head, you've got to make some decisions, and I'm okay with that. But to say I'm giving it to the other guy because he's younger, to me, you're going against the rules. The rules.
That's true.
I agree. I agree with that completely. And I'll bet you anything there'll be an additional prejudice against a guy like Bunting is that, he's playing with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. As you know, it's not easy to find players that play well with talent. We've talked about
Kubalik ended up a top 3, and he played with Kane and Taves at the time. And look, his play has dropped off ever since. We talked about that yesterday too. But that year he was worthy, and he was at least in the finalist. So I think Bunting will be a finalist. But I think you're right as far as if Bunting were to score, 35 goals, I do think his age would work against him. I think Kevin's right.
Yeah, and to me, it's wrong. That's not what the rule says. It's nobody's fault that he's a rookie at 26, and there are other rookies that are 19 and 20. It's just the way it is. But the rules say he's eligible, so you got to consider him, and you can't exclude him just because you don't like that he's older. So
now, I'll talk about this just because a couple people mentioned this in regards to the Islanders, because we've talked about Clutterbuck, and we've talked about maybe Andy Green or Zdeno Chara, who are both UFAs, and a few people in the chat are saying that they're shopping, or that the mention of the name Sebastian Aho, not the good Sebastian Aho, not the forward, but the defenseman. I'm casting aspersions on this guy, saying he's the bad one, but no, I mean when the other guy,
Sebastian Aho light.
Yes. Yes,
the 90 calorie version. Yeah.
Right. the Coke Zero, Sebastian Aho.
I like that. Yeah.
But this is the thing. Okay, I mean, is it even worthy of mentioning that he's a 7-8 defenseman? He's making less than. I mean, Russ, you've seen him more than I have. I mean, I think he's an okay depth guy.
He's an average guy who can come in and play, and it's worthy if you're the Tampa Bay Lightning. As an example, the Lightning had 2 scouts at the Flyers game, and I'm pretty sure they'd be scouting Justin Braun because they could afford Braun, especially if half of them is bought out, is retained by the Flyers. Think about that for the Lightning. If the Lightning were to add Justin Braun, that would be a lot. So even if the Lightning could get nobody, Mike, and they added Aho, it does still make them stronger.
Sure, but I mean, a Braun makes more. More sense, especially with Philadelphia. If Philadelphia retained 50%, then that's
how much is Braun's deal?
I believe he's 1.8, but let me double check.
Yeah, because then he's 900,000, and it basically makes him almost a minimum. So you can shuffle somebody out and move him in without. Yeah,
he'd be great with Tampa. I tweeted that yesterday. Like that to me makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I think he knew that he was being scouted by them. I mean, like I said, he played a different kind of game last night.
Yeah.
Like he played a game that was like showing how
Sebastian Aho would be worth it for a team looking to build depth for a long run because you never know who's going to get injured.
By the way, I don't know if you saw that Larry Brooks, who's always pretty wired in, has suggested that the Rangers are interested in Colin Miller.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's an interesting one. Look, I mean, on that team, if you're telling me, Russ, you could put in Colin Miller or Patrick Nemeth, I'll put in Colin Miller.
Yeah, I mean, you Colin Miller at 50% because he's making close to $4 million.
But they have space. They don't even have to.
No, they have space, and they might be able to. And he's injured right now, but it's not like season ending. So, yeah, I mean, I've heard Miller in connection with Toronto, and that was purely because of his Sault Ste. Marie background, and I know that the Leafs had been interested in him in the past. But I mean, the question is with the Rangers: is it a lefty or a righty, or does it matter?
They want a lefty, but again, like I pointed out to the Ranger fans, because the Rangers had a scout at the Flyers game. If they were to get Braun, he could play either side. Justin Braun has played either side for many years.
And so can Sherratt.
There's plenty of guys that could do that, especially the more veteran guys. So I don't think they should be as hung up on it, Ranger fans and even media, as they are. I think if it's the right guy, they could figure it out.
Yeah, but coaches are loath to do that now.
I know.
In the old days, it used to happen.
Yeah.
Routinely, and it just, coaches just don't, everything boils down to even the small things, like, taking backhand passes and, versus.
I think Gallant's open to some stuff, Kev, because he's moved Lafreniere around, on to a different spot on the wing. And so I think he's a coach that might be open to it.
Yeah.
The big thing I always hear about playing off wing is how they're going to handle the boards, like how they're going to handle along the boards. Like that's what everybody seems to be really.
I did ask someone about whether they thought, somebody who is pretty knowledgeable about the league, whether they thought the Sharks would get Hurdle signed, and he said, "How could they not?" Yeah. And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, what does that say if you can't re-sign Hurdle? Like, who are the Sharks if they don't have?" They have Hurdle.
They would have an identity problem. I mean, William Eklund will be their guy next year, though. That would be their identity moving forward, I believe.
I mean, the whole impetus.
You mean the guy who's still mad at him because he, had to go back to Sweden?
Yes.
Yeah.
The whole impetus of the termination of Evander Kane was to open up the cap space to be able to sign Hurdle. So if they can't get Hurdle signed, I mean, that's a statement about whether Hurdle believes that the Sharks will be good in the next 2 or 3 years. And
that's fair. I mean, I think he has seen things deteriorate, and this year the Sharks have played better than we all thought they would. But in the end, if he takes away cap space, they're not going to be able to get much better.
When you've got 33 plus year-old defensemen making $18 million collectively between Vlasic and Carlson, that are basically albatross contracts because Carlson can't stay healthy and Vlasic is slowed down to the point of being a bottom pairing defenseman, your organization's in deep trouble.
Yeah, it's not like Burns is cheap either.
Yeah.
No, but at least Burns right now still can do something offensively.
Yeah.
Carlson, when he's healthy, is great. The problem is he's never healthy. And Vlasic is just, he's been a warrior, but he's blocked too many shots and he's slowed down to the point that he's just not the player. He's not worth $7 million anymore.
I talked to somebody today. This is an interesting thing. I talked to somebody this morning, and I want to talk about this. Now, I know it's a little bit off. This is a summer rumor. It's not a rumor for now, but it's a summer rumor. But it was interesting enough to hear, and that is that he is firmly of the belief that the Boston Bruins and some of the stuff the Boston Bruins are doing now by not making certain moves, by not taking on certain space, certain salaries that might stretch into the future a little bit,
right, is
because the Bruins have in their mind that they're going to go hard after Nazem Kadri. That's the Bruins' target.
I can only hope. That's
where they would.
The only way I would buck that, Eck, is the Bruins have never paid top of the market for any player, and they would have to pay top of the market for Kadri, and I don't see it.
And they know Kadri better than anybody because they've suckered him into playoff suspensions twice. So, do I think that they'd be interested? He's a Bruin type of player, but.
Yes.
I'm not because somebody asked on Twitter, like, what do you think Kadri's going to get in as an unrestricted free agent? I think he's going to get $8 million plus, and if he gets $8 million plus, I can't see the Bruins paying him that.
I don't think he'll get the plus. I think he'll get the 8.
I think he'll get
What do you think?
I don't really know if they pay him 8. I don't think so.
And remember, he's 32 years old.
That's the thing.
He's the same age as John Tavares, same draft. So you're talking about. Do you think there's a team out there that's going to pay him 7? That's going to sign him for 7?
Yes,
I do.
They're going to have to, but that contract is going to.
If he wins like the NBA.
Yeah, but he's going to be a 5-year dude.
Right.
That's what that's
going to be a 5-year dude. It's somewhere between 35 and 40 million.
I'm with you. That's where
it'll be.
And I think that, but I think that is not impossible for Boston to pull off.
No, well, okay. I will tell you that I have a sneaking suspicion because, and maybe Russ can clarify this. I mean, Jeff Gordon doesn't strike me as being dumb when it comes to signing free agents, but there is talk in Montreal that, well, this is not going to be a full rebuild, that they're going to go out in free agency and they're going to sign, they're going to clean out contracts and they're going to sign players. Kadri, his family have always been fans of the Montreal Canadiens.
There is that talk, Mike, and I personally, and again, I don't talk to Jeff Gordon every day, but I've chatted with him a bunch of times before he was with the Rangers in the GM position, and I just see him in passing. But I have followed him closely, and I don't believe what's going around. I think that is media and fan driven, and I don't think they're going to add a lot of salary and think they're going to compete next year. I don't think Jeff Gordon would think that either.
I think good, because I think it would be completely irresponsible and just dumb.
I'd be surprised if they went and did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
especially with Connor Bedard sitting out there, like, why would you?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
That is true, and I think that you're gonna see so many different things, but I do think you have. Some people say that there are some players, Kadri being the main one of the main big ticket offensive player that's coming out as UFA, that could really affect who some moves we see this in a few weeks here, as far as money goes, because trying to keep that salary open for the summer.
I do agree with your analysis that Boston is probably going to be in the rental market, just like I think the Rangers are going to be in the rental market but for different reasons. I mean, the Rangers, they've got Zibanejad and Fox's contract kicking in next year, so they're not going to have as much cap space. With the Bruins, I think that maybe they want to reserve space for a guy like Kadri. But I think that their level of desperation is going to be based on whether Patrice Bergeron resigns. That's going to be step one. If he doesn't resign, they might have to go into some sort of a mini reset because you don't have a number one and you don't have a number two.
That's the guy. I think if the Canadians sign anybody, they'll sign him to work with the younger players and be that guy. And, the fans will love that. But I don't think they're going to be like, buying all kinds of free agents on the market. But I could see them getting Bergeron.
Yeah, Quebec native his agent was Kent Hughes.
Yep.
I still, I just can't buy that. I don't have any insight on it, but
I don't have any insight either.
But I just think just can't imagine him wanting to.
I know.
No, leave. Yeah, go to Montreal.
It would be tough to see him in that jersey, Kev. It's like
but I think it's just staying in Boston.
He just feels like a Bruin forever. Like
we said that Chara didn't stay in Boston. Krejci didn't stay.
Chara wasn't born and bred in the Boston organization,
right? And also, Chara wasn't as good when he left Boston. Like this, you're talking about a player who's still playing at the top of his game.
But he wants money, and they don't like to pay money.
Yeah, but to him, they'll pay money, and they have to. I think they realize they have to too. I think that's. I mean, they're struggling right now too. They're not playing that well right now.
I mean, heck, if they really were going to pay money, why would they let it go this long?
Because they have never signed him in the middle of the year, but they always wait on him. Like they've waited on him before.
No, but that's the thing. Again, the same thing I said about Chara, I will say about Bergeron. They are taking him for granted that he is just going to walk up to them and say, yes, I will take less because I love it here and I love the atmosphere. Perhaps. And this is his last chance to get paid, and I don't think he's going to do it. Perhaps they've
already talked about this through. I mean, he has such a good relationship with that team. They already might know what they're doing. that to me is more likely
possible.
And Chara left over the role he was going to play.
Yeah, right.
I mean, he basically what it came down to is they wanted him to come back, but they wanted him to come back. Were going to reconfigure their team, and they wanted him to play a lesser role, and he was offended by that, and he left. Mm-hmm. So,
Bergeron may get offended by the dollar offer that Boston gives him.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not like he doesn't have a boatload of money.
Now, one thing that people are talking about in the chat that might affect the point of view and the battle plan for the Capitals going into the deadline is Carl Hagelin apparently was injured in practice yesterday. It's an eye injury, and it says he's out long term. So he'll go on LTIR, and that will open up about almost $3 million in cap space.
There's your goalie money.
Exactly. There's your goalie money. So, that opens up.
What goalie are you going to get for that?
Well, no, they could get him, and they could still trade one of their existing, and the count of those two in the salary would be your goalie money.
I mean, we talk about we talk about Samsonov and Vanacek is a UFA. He's making under $750 this year. Yeah. He's a UFA.
They'd have to trade Samsonov, and then they would clear another $2, and then you'd have $5 million.
If they don't believe in Samsonov anymore, if they don't.
Well, I mean, it's possible they don't.
Well, if they're listening to Act, they don't believe.
What did I do? I just said I like Vanacek better. I think
you've been real positive about the Caps, right? You're right, Act.
Hold on, guys. I'm sorry.
You've been a real supporter of the Caps. What did I do? It's like every day he's like they're falling out of the playoffs. What?
The Islanders are going to catch them. Yeah. No, but okay, but I mean, obviously they're I mean, Hagelin is a very valuable.
Yeah, he can still skate. I was watching him the other day.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a loss for them, but I mean, that's sort of what a GM around this time of the year, Kev, has to do is sort of roll with the punches and make chicken salad out of chicken bleep. And if Hagelin is out long term, then that opens up an opportunity to do something else to improve your team.
Well, for sure. Right now, one of the reasons why we haven't seen much movement is GMs are waiting to see who gets hurt. That they don't have any money now, but if someone gets lost for the season, suddenly that opens everything. Like we're just talked about, Tampa Bay. Needing to get like a defenseman under $2 million so they can half them and get somebody under $1 million because that's all they can do because they pretty much have said they don't want to give up their anybody on their team. They like their team and they want to go with that. And but suddenly if they lose one of their top players, suddenly they got $6 million. You don't think they'd spend that? I think they would. So
well, and this is the interesting question, because now we're 19 days from the deadline, so less than 3 weeks. And around this time of year, every year, we always wait for what's the first shoe that's going to fall. Not specifically a player, but because we thought it was going to be like Sherratt, and then the Toffoli deal happened. And that was more, in a way, I mean, there was a term existing on his deal, so it wasn't a rental deal. But we haven't seen the first rental shoe drop. And the question is, since you talked to GMs, Kev, what's the feeling out there? Is it going to be like it's going to be a week before, 2 weeks before?
Well, what's holding everything up is, and this is what I'm writing about today, is there are too many teams in between. Like, we have no idea what the Winnipeg Jets are going to do. Right. We have no idea what the Dallas Stars are going to do. We have no idea what the Anaheim Ducks are going to do. And those guys hold a lot of the key players. Yeah. Like, there's going to be, and we don't know whether Hurdle's going to sign. Right. So there are a lot of key players. Like, if Dallas holds on to this playoff spot, there's going to be a lot of disappointment around the National Hockey League, because there's multiple teams that think they're in on, Pavelski, or Klingberg.
Well, what about this in terms of, because I think that's definitely a determining factor whether teams drop out or stay in the race. But I heard a report yesterday, and I know that you mentioned something about Fleury in your blog this morning, but I heard something, I think it was Elliot Friedman, that reported that the talk out of Chicago was that Fleury doesn't want to leave, that he doesn't want to go anywhere. And that if he says he doesn't want to go anywhere, then okay, those teams scrambling for goaltenders, where do they go?
No, we've talked about that. Yeah. That's a possibility, and it's real for him. When with some guys you say things like, well, they're going to play. Yeah. I mean, that like, for example, I said that about Giroux. Like, I get that he loves Philadelphia, but I also think he wants to win a cup. He's a pretty competitive guy. I don't think I don't think he's going to pull a Matt Sundin and say, well, I'll just ride it out here. Right. But with Fleury, he's won a cup. Yeah. He's done his thing. His family's important. He likes to, being comfortable where he is, and maybe he doesn't want to go to Edmonton, doesn't want to go play against his teammates. I think it would bother him to play against his former Penguins teammates. So I think it's a real possibility. I think everybody's well aware of that he may just decide to stay.
The only thing is, Kev, there's a printed report recently now where not only is Danny Briere out there scouting what the Flyers should get for Giroux, but also helping him transition, go to another team, because Briere loved it in Philly so much that he's chatting with him about that. So that's the only thing that might change that.
Well, the only thing I would say is I don't know how they can afford him. So, I mean, they're going to have to do something big. They can buy out Van Beek.
Like after the season, they can do it.
They can, although it's not quite the savings that you.
No, it's not a great savings, but it's a savings.
No, it's a heavy signing bonus contract, but again, they could trade a second round pick to get somebody to take.
Arizona needs players under contract, so they still could try and dump them there.
Yeah,
I mean, I think Fleury probably, and you talked about this a little bit yesterday, Kevin. That I think that at some point here, we talked about, not yesterday, we talked about on the show 2 days ago, that Fleury probably wants to go to Colorado, but whether or not Colorado is going to be in on him or not, we don't know. That's like the big question. That's the obvious team. Like if Colorado calls up, okay, they have a really good chance at winning.
Right.
And they're a Western Conference team. Not going to play the Penguins until like the Stanley Cup Finals, if that.
But Colorado can't do both Giroux at 8.2.
No, they can't.
No, there's no way.
They can't. But what do they need more? And I guess that's the big question.
I think it's what does Sakic want more, and I think he wants Giroux.
Well, they could do that, but they'd have to launder some money. As I like to say, they'd have to go out and get a third team in.
Very laundered money. Yes.
Yeah. What are you, Tony Montana?
Honestly, I think it's Sakic pushing for Giroux. I really feel that way.
See, I don't think so. I kind of think that at the end of the day, Sakic would probably, I mean, just based on his history, do you really think he trusts Kemper as much as this? Like that he's suddenly okay with Kemper winning?
No, but again, I think he knows he can't sign Kadri, and he might be able to sweet talk Giroux into signing an extension there, and that would solve his problem.
Unless they don't think Alex Newhook can step into the number 2 center.
I don't think you should expect.
I mean, they scored it up. Do they need it? Did they need another forward? I mean, they score like crazy.
They do need another center if Kadri leaves, because Giroux is great on faceoffs, and so is Kadri.
Yeah, you can get Giroux in the summer still. I mean, do they need a summer? They don't need him now.
They never replaced Brandon Saad last year. And Brandon Saad was,
but their offense is fine. Let's admit, like they're not. Not a problem.
It's more about their team defense, and Giroux would bolster their team defense a lot.
I get that.
I think it's the presence, the aura, the grit.
Yes,
that's what they're going for. I don't think it's the scoring and.
Yeah, I made the comparison, Kevin. I think he's a modern day Butch Goring in terms of the addition that bringing in that type of guy. I mean, he's not over the hill. He's versatile. He can play center or wing. He can play on your power play. He's a leader. I mean,
and he can be as goofy as Butch Goring if you talk to him, and I like that in both guys.
Well, it's that helmet. It's that bad helmet that Butch wore, the one that he spray painted constantly.
Listen, Butch is a joy, man. If he comes, you chat with him in the press box, he's the best.
Yeah, and I think one of our someone from the chat room just put on there about Kemper's 19-2 in his last 21. That's real. Like he has played better. The only concern would be, he hasn't done this before. But I say this all the time. Ed Belfour was a bum until he won a cup. Then he was a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
So I think they feel like he can do it, and we've seen him perform at a high level before. And given the choice between not getting Giroux and bringing in Fleury, I think they'd rather bring in Giroux because I think they have faith in Kemper.
And like you said, Kev, Sakic traded a first-round pick for Kemper. So if all of a sudden he's trading for Fleury, that's admitting that it was a mistake to trade a first-round pick for Kemper.
Yeah.
Really. I don't think so. I mean, Kemper's there for a while, right? I mean, he still has some years left, right?
No, he's a UFA after this year.
He's a UFA after this year? Okay.
Yeah, they would probably, if they traded for Fleury, they would probably flip Kemper to someplace else to recoup some of the draft capital. That would only make sense. But I don't think that that's realistic. That's so traumatic to a team. He's 19-2 in your last 21, and you're going to trade him for a second-round pick because you're going to trade for Marc-Andre Fleury. It's not happening.
No,
I don't think it will either. But X point is well taken. Whether Fleury feels like this or not, logic says he should feel like this, which is Colorado gives them a good chance to win. So
that's the best place for him.
Yeah, to go. Although I had Eck and I had talked about the fact that Minnesota might be lying in the weeds on Fleury. Maybe. Yes. There's some logic to Guerin being interested in him. He knows him well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the big thing about Minnesota that we knew at the start of the year, but we haven't talked about much, is if there's ever a time for them to push all their chips in the middle of the table, it's this season.
Yes.
Because there's less cap pain of Parisi and Suter, because there's going to start being pain next season.
Yeah, it's going to be pain.
No, it's true.
So you might as well go for it. So
this is a big season, and I think that
what's helping them is the fact that Matt Boldy is turning into a star, which is not unexpected, and Kaprizov. So luckily, those guys making nothing, next to nothing. I mean, Kaprizov will make something next year. That's helping them.
Yeah, that makes another reason to go for it all this year.
Yeah, this is the year for them. They really are in that spot, and it feels as if it could. Well, they play Colorado really tough. Like they have absolutely. Those teams are 50-50 when they play each other. It's really they're great.
They're different teams. They really do play completely different hockey.
They play completely different hockey, but when you watch them, that is one of those Kevin series that we talked about. Like anybody could win that best of 7 if you played it 100 times. That's really one of those series, and it's just because Minnesota has such depth and they and they score from play all over the place that you just don't expect, and they hit like crazy.
Right, but Kaprizov's extension is already. They're in year one of it, but but next year, the cap hit on the Suter and Parise goes up to $12.6 million. So that's dead money.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, and then it goes up to over $14 million in year 3. So yeah, this is. I mean, it only makes sense for them to go after Fleury because. And maybe they can flip Cam Talbot to Chicago in the deal to clear cap space, or have Chicago retain salary, and all these are mechanisms that make it more possible. But I think the thing that makes it the most possible is this is a limited window. You've got young players in Rossi and Boldy that are going to come up that'll help you in terms of not costing a ton, but this is an opportunity right here and right now.
Yeah, this is, and like I said before, you cannot I follow the Wild pretty closely, and you can't under talk about how their goalies have messed them up in the playoffs. It's just a situation that they really feel, and not always the goalie's fault, but just by injuries, by all sorts of things.
Yeah, because I was going to say Backstrom was a good goalie. He just had injury problems.
He got hurt. Remember, he got hurt the morning skate of Game 1 versus Chicago that one year.
He was one of the better goalies that year.
He was amazing. That year they looked like they had a serious shot against the Blackhawks, and in the morning skate of Game 1 he goes down. Right, and this is something that they have lived through in Minnesota for a very long time. They've never gone in with a proven goalie who can win it in the playoffs, and I don't think that Talbot is that, and I just don't think he's that. And I think that Guerin knows that. I think that Fleury saying he's going to stay in Chicago you're right. Well, you're absolutely right. He's absolutely his own guy and will do what he wants to do. There's no two ways about that. But it's also a good thing to say if there's no real options for you also. It's just if, as opposed to him, so at this point, basically, you're not going to say he turned down a trade to Edmonton. He just wanted to stay in Chicago. I don't know that that's so. I think that that's sometimes an easier way, especially agents. Agents always go play that card versus, you don't want to piss off a whole city and say he turned down a trade here, turned down a trade there. He just wants to stay in Chicago. That's cool.
Well, to be honest, he might want to stay another year and play.
He might want to stay another year and play.
Right in Chicago. I mean, you
might see them as they have some good young players, or they're getting together at times.
Or he just likes the experience.
Yeah, it's a fun place to play. It's not a bad city to play in. So it's not a bad city to live in. It's a great,
One last thing, Vepsis in the chat.
I got one thing too. Go ahead.
Okay, you first. I'll go with that.
Well, I did go ahead because I just wanted to tell a funny story about Eklund, who's going to have to fill in the holes of his own.
Go ahead.
Story. Yeah.
Okay. The Vepsis in the chat mentions Giordano. And I don't know where there's some speculation out there that he's told Seattle that he only wants to go to 2 teams. I haven't heard that. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe you've heard it, but I have said going back to the middle of the year that one potential team that made a lot of sense in terms of needing a top 4 defenseman and the fit would be Toronto. And there are 2 reasons why. One, he's from Toronto. He's coming to the end of his career. Maybe he's got another year or 2, but there's always been chatter of him wanting to play in Toronto before the end of his career. The other thing is his longtime defense partner is a guy named TJ Brody, and TJ Brody is in Toronto. And over the last couple weeks, the Leafs have experimented. Their number 1 pair was Morgan Rielly and TJ Brody. And over the last 3-4 games, they have now split them up after the injury to Jake Muzzin. And some people are thinking, well, they're splitting them up because they want to see if Rielly can play with somebody else, because they could possibly be bringing in Giordano. Now the question is, can they afford his salary? Can they, what is Seattle asking for in return? All I know is this: there is a close relationship between Ron Francis and Kyle Dubas going back to Sault Ste. Marie. So it would not be out of the realm of possibility that deal happens.
Yeah. No.
Anyway, here's my goalie story, and I got to fill in the blanks because my isn't as good as it should. So when I first met Eck, this was about 163,000 years ago in the Paleolithic era.
The Paleolithic age.
Yeah, and it was 2006 in the Stanley Cup final. Yeah. And there was a question about who was going to play in goal for the Edmonton Oilers. And who were the 2 goalies, Eklund?
Well, it was Mark. Was it Mark? Not Mark Strum.
UC Markkinen.
And who was the second one?
And it wasn't
Talbot because Talbot got hurt.
No.
God, Ty Conklin.
Ty Conklin. There you go.
That doesn't seem right. But anyway, so we're watching practice, and Eklund is, brand new to this world of journalism, and he's trying to figure out who's going to start based on practice. Yeah. And he's watching the practice very closely, and who's into it, and how many shots are taken, and what's going on, and he makes his prediction of who it's going to be. It's going to start. I don't remember who you said, but I do remember I turned you in and I said, no, it's going to be the other guy. And he goes, how do you know that? And I said, Jim Matheson told me. And he said, how does Jim Matheson know? Was he watching practice? He says, no. I said, no, he asked somebody. And they go, and sure enough, the next day I was right. So
and they lost.
And they did, but Eck was trying to figure out just based on how they were practicing and how many shots they took. And
I mean it's so funny. Like you want to watch them, and at that point it was it felt like it was so uneasy because Rolison had gotten hurt. Remember, he was the guy who was going to be supposed to be the guy. Rolison had gotten hurt,
right? And
so now they were down to their second and their third string goalie. And at that point, I'm thinking, well, they might as well look at both of them. But you were 100%. Yeah, obviously, you had the info.
Well, I had the info only because Jim Matheson had told me because he had asked someone within the organization, who had spilled the beans. I'm not so sure 17 years later if we would have had the bean spillers that we had back then. So everyone,
there's no question with Twitter, things have changed completely. Like. As far
people, people aren't as free with the information.
I know it makes my world way harder, way harder, and it just makes rumor world so much harder. Twitter is just closed. There are people who used to just talk because they would talk, and now they know it's going to end up on thousands of Twitter feeds.
No, that's right.
So different. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks, Kevin, as always, for reminding me of my weaknesses. And
I don't think it was a weakness. I think it was kind of fun,
Oh, it was fun. No, totally fun. No, I was just kidding. I know that was
5 holes is weakness.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's actually a good point, Mike. When I was a goalie, that was my weakness. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you all on tomorrow, Thursday.